Mr. Otanu Rai Chaudhary, today's speaker, and my dear students. A very good evening to all present here. On behalf of IIC Narula Institute of Technology, I welcome you all to the online session on prototype validation, converting prototype into a startup. Before starting today's session, I would like to request our Vice President of MHRD IIC Kona sir uh, to say a few words. Sir, please.
Respected Principal Madam, Register Madam, members of the organizing committee, and other fellow staff and students. Today we are very enlightened that Mr. Otanu Raichaudhuri has agreed to deliver his nicest speech on IC Innovation Cell regarding of this today's subject matter. Students and faculty of our institution associated with MOC's IC's Innovation Cell will have exclusive opportunity to participate in various innovation related initiative and compositions, and they themselves have the opportunity to organize periodic workshops, seminars, interactions with entrepreneurs, investors, professionals, and create a mentored pool for student innovators. They can also win exciting prize or certificate in various EDP activities. Our students also have created an institution's innovation portal with the help of faculties to highlight innovative projects. Students or faculties associated with IIC will get exclusive opportunity to participate in various innovation-related initiatives and competitions organized by MHRD MIC. And for that cases, they have to luckily win prizes, certificates, meet or interact with renowned business leaders and top-notch academicians, experimentation with new latest technologies, visit companies and places, and see new culture of entrepreneurship. Our honorable speaker, Mr. Otanu Raichaudhuri, founder, Capsule Lab, IoT, evangelist, will precisely explain all pros and cons of today's events to successful of today's events. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, sir. So today we have a very honorable speaker, Mr. Otanu Rai Chaudhary, amongst us. I take the privilege to give a small introduction about the speaker. Mr. Otanu Rai Chaudhary is an IoT evangelist and a founder of Capsule Labs. He is the technology mentor for the Ranmir Foundation, focusing on innovations at the bottom of the pyramid. He teaches innovation and entrepreneurship at Calcutta University. He was a techno-functional consultant for IoT and AI-led digital transformations, providing delivery and solution support to Altia's global sales team for over 100 IoT solutions. Prior to Altiax, Mr. Otanu was a member of technical staff at Infosys Health Labs, Harvard Sensor Networking Lab, Telcordia Advanced Technology Solution Labs, which is now Ericsson, and Blue Highway, a Welsh Allen company. He has postgraduate degrees in computer science from IIT Guwahati and Harvard University. He is a senior member of IEEE and Computer Society of India, that is CSI. He has published over 35 papers and patents in the area of IoT and wireless sensor networks. So I welcome you, sir, to our session, to this session. Sir, please, you can start your session.
Thank you. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, and welcome one and all to this session. Right. So the objective of today's session is to clearly lay out a roadmap, right, through which entrepreneurship is realized, through which innovation is realized, and innovation is brought out in the market. Right. The first point that before I get started, let me lay down a few ground rules. Right. I want this discussion to be interactive. I want there to be as many questions as possible. Right. Please feel free to stop me and ask questions if you want to ask them, or you can put up those questions in the chat box. Right. You can ask your questions in English, Bengali, or in Hindi. Right. But we will be able to answer them only in English for the benefit of all who are present here. Right. Now that said, today's talk is really about the spirit of entrepreneurship, right? How do you bring a product into the market, right? And I want you to think that everything that you see around you, be it a pen, be it a remote control, be it a bottle of water, right? Anything that you see in front of you, you have to think that somebody was responsible in designing, in putting that product in front of you, right? So every product that you have seen is somebody's thought process, is somebody's brainchild, right? And that's how products come into the market, right? How do you go about this? There are certain structured processes that I will discuss through which you identify and you essentially bring a product to life, right? And the risks that are associated with taking it to market, that's part of the entrepreneurship journey, right? So what I want to do today again is a very well laid out path that can be followed, and in terms of setting up a company. Before we get there, I need to go past a few definitions so that we are all on the same page, right? The first thing is innovation itself, right? And innovation in my terminology is the act of creating a new experience or improving the efficacy of a process. So either you're bringing in something completely new into the market, or you are improving the way something was being done, right? In that, I've used the word experience because when we talk about innovation, it does not really have to be a product, right? It does not have to be tangible, right? It can be something that is physically you can touch and feel, or it can be a service, right? If you have invented a new a new way of styling hair, that is an innovation. If you are able to connect people over the internet and you are able to give them a feeling of home, right? That's a social network. That's an innovation, right? So innovations does not necessarily have to be a physical thing. Innovation can be a service, or it can be packaged into a product, right? But it must give you a new experience, or it must improve something that you were already doing. The second definition that I have is of entrepreneurship. And in my mind, entrepreneurship is a behavioral act, right? It's a behavioral act of risk to connect capital to labor. Why I say it is a behavioral act is because when somebody becomes an entrepreneur, it is a fundamental change in their approach at looking at problems. it is a fundamental change in the way you approach a problem, and where you are not looking at a problem from the scope of the immediate goal. You are able to visualize how that action will lead to a multiplier effect and lead to significant changes down the line. It is a lifestyle choice to be an entrepreneur, and once you are an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur for life, right? You'll also hear the word technopreneur from every now and then, and that's just an entrepreneur who's using technology to connect capital with labor, right? When I talk about labor, it is I'm not using it in any derogatory sense. I'm using the word labor as human resources who are capable of delivering a particular, who have a particular skill set, right? So you could be knowledge, it could be a knowledge workforce, it could be a physically skilled workforce, right? The skill could be anything, including software development, including research, right? So this is all classified under different classes of labor, right? And why you are doing that? You're doing that because if there is a certain amount of capital, you are able to leverage that capital so that you are able to create more out of that capital, right? And the last definition I'm going to stick on with is a business, right? And a business is a legal entity with the objective of creating value for its stakeholders, right? A business must have a profit motive. When I say objective, the objective can be a profit motive. The objective can be a more philanthropic value that is perceived, right? But for all practical purposes, the concept of a business is that it must generate revenue, it must generate profits for its stakeholders, right? So when you are an entrepreneur, when you are getting into business, you have to have a very, very clear mindset that why your business exists, and your business exists to make profit. Right? You have to be very clear on that. That said, I'm going to get into this talk of early stage entrepreneurship, right? The early stages are really when the ideas are conceived and it's still not completely formed, but it is still forming, right? At a concept stage, so in part of what I call the early stage entrepreneurship, the first stage is essentially the concept stage, right? Where things are still unclear, right? And the first thing that you need is a founding team. Who are the people who are going to take this forward, right? It can be a founder, it can be one person, or it can be a group of people who have come together in order to create, work on a particular project or a particular business plan, right? Both of them are possible. In most cases, it is a founding team because there are so many roles that a founder needs to play. It is best to have a team to work with, right? That is why you need a founding team. The founding team really comes about from different places, right? It could be that you meet somebody over a cup of coffee, and there is an immediate connect. You feel that you are sharing some kind of common vision or some kind of a common goal, right? That could lead to the foundation of a team. But whatever it is, the founding team it is very, very important that the founding team has fundamental level trust among themselves, because you have to look out for each other, right? That's a very critical characteristic of any founding team. How does that trust come about? Well, you could be knowing, the founding members could be knowing each other from their school days, right? They could be knowing each other through family. They could be knowing each other through a common work that they do, right? But they must, it is very difficult to randomly get two people together and say that, okay, now found a team, right? The trust will not be there, right? So for a founding team, it is very important that there is trust within the team. A lot of you listening in today are, you're still in your college, or we have a few faculty members in here today as well, right? So think about if you have to start something like when you are creating a company, right? It is almost like a marriage, right? And uh, as in any marriage, there is going to be a lot of bumps in the road, right? The team has to be strong enough. They have to trust each other to go past those bumps, right? The second characteristic of a founding team is that they should have complementary skills, right? If I take the example of one of the most successful companies like Apple, right? Apple was founded by two gentlemen by the name of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Whereas Steve Wozniak was a technologist who focused a lot of his energies in terms of building up the computers. Steve Jobs was somebody who was a visionary, right? So together they could come together, they could combine, and together they had the ability to bring technology into a form factor which was acceptable to the market, right? Which is why any team, anybody who's seeking out to create a company, they have to have those complementary skills, right? I said they should have, because there are also examples like Bill Gates and Microsoft, which was completely founded by one member as well, right? So two important characteristics: trust and complementary skills necessary for a founding team. Why are these complementary skills needed? Because the founders, they have to wear multiple hats, right? As a founder of a company, there is nothing you do not have to do, right? This could include setting and executing the mission and vision of the company, right? If you have certain operations to run, buying things, delivering things, whatever it is, you have to execute those operations yourself, right? You have to execute the go-to-market strategy. How are you going to take this product to market? What channels are you going to use? How are you going to reach your end customer? Right? You have to set the organizational policy and the talent pool. You have to ensure that there are good people who are going to be joining your company. Right? You have to ensure that there is revenue that is being made, that the bottom line is doing well, that there are significant sales that are happening. You have to develop your own product strategy, right? You have to think about how to keep, you have to continuously think about how to improve the processes within your company, right? You have to think about how the brand is being perceived externally and create a need in the market, right? And you have to also hear the voice of the customer, the kind of feedback that they are giving you, right? So there are multiple roles that are available in an organization, and that is why founders need to wear many hats. And that is why if you have a founding team with complementary skill sets, then it helps to divide up some of that workload, right? Having said that, once the team comes together and with the development of the institute incubation cells, right, there are many ways founders could come together. Like you and a friend of yours could come together and propose an idea to the innovation cell, right? Or you could already be working on something and then you could come and approach, right? But once you have come together and the team and the founding members have kind of gelled together, the next important step is to create a vision, right? Why are you together? That question has to be answered. What is the common goal that you want to achieve, right? Typically, when you set out the vision of a company, right, it is recommended that the vision statement be broad and strategic, right? However, it should not be so broad as saying you want to do something for humanity, nor should it be so narrow as to saying that you want to set up a food stall in front of a mall, right? Both are valid vision statements, but one is too broad and the other one is probably too narrow, right? So your vision statements should be something that is sufficiently broad and has strategic importance, right? Why strategic? Because you have to, it would not be possible to go through that entire journey alone. You would need to have investors with you. You would need money to be able to develop your ideas further, right? So that is why it has to be of strategic importance, so that investors can align with that strategic vision, right? For example, if you were to do something that if you say that you want to write a piece of software that's going to print a few extra bits on a few extra digits on an ATM slip card, right? That is also you can have a company around that, but the vision would not be very strategic, right? As opposed to saying that if you wanted to tackle problems related to environmental security, right? If you wanted to tackle problems related to clean water, right? So those are more strategic visions, and it is easier to find other investors who may be willing to invest on that idea alone, right? Because they also feel that they can contribute to a larger cause, right? So that is why vision statements have to be broad and strategic, and vision statements and the strategic part is what draws your investors. Once you have a vision statement, once you know what you are about, what the company is going to be about, the next step is to identify the market gap. Why should you build the product, or what is the product that you can build? Right? A lot of times I've come across situations where people have come up to me and said, I have an invention, right? It is very hard to market that invention because there is nothing known about its prior art. There is nothing that we know about whether this invention is even applicable in the market. It may be applicable, but the audience, right, the sales volume may not justify the cost involved in building that particular product, right? So, which is why it is always better to first identify the market gap and then build your MVP and then build your prototypes, right? So what do you do when you are looking for your market gap, right? There are some techniques, there are some approaches that you can take, right? The first one is doing market research. Market research is available as off-the-shelf keyword research from several organizations like Gartner. They will provide you a particular pre-canned research. For example, you wanted to know how many people are likely to buy a white colored toothpaste or a red colored toothpaste in North Bengal, right? So that's a question that that will be answered by your market research statement. Either you get that result from a company, right, or you deploy your own team to do that research, or you talk to people, right? But you need to have answers to this question: where is your market? Does the market really want what you want to build, right? You have to ensure that there is no gap between that, right? You should be building what the market needs or what the market may need, right? So one approach is doing market research. The second approach is to do patent landscaping. And what you do over there is, when you have a particular vision and you have a sense of what you want to build, you may want to use sometimes free tools, sometimes more paid tools, like you can use patent.google to kind of look up what are the similar kind of patents, when have they been filed, who are the companies who are filing those patents, right? So that will give you a sense of what has been covered and what has not been covered. Typically, if you find a patent that is very close to the kind of ideas that you have, you will find that the earlier the patent, the broader it is. So it will use terminologies which may mean many things, right? For example, there was a long-standing patent war between a company called Garmin and I think it was Garmin and Volkswagen over just the use of the word mobile in the patent, right? Both of them were building, essentially GPS systems, and with Garmin, they built a handheld GPS system, and Volkswagen already had implemented a GPS location system in their cars itself. So the car company came first, and they used that definition to say that it is a mobile GPS system, right? It did not have anything to do with a handheld system that Garmin was building, yet both of them were locked in a patent war for a very long time, primarily because the former company used the word mobile and used the definition of mobile as something that moves, irrespective of whether it is handheld or not, right? So they claimed that their patent was getting infringed. So you have to, if you if you want to secure your ideas, right? So the patent landscaping becomes very important. The third aspect to this is competition positioning, where you try and understand who are the other players who are also offering products in that space or are planning to offer products in that space. And the way you find that out is either by buying their products or by doing market research about how satisfied people are with their product, or by even sometimes interviewing candidates from the competition, right? All of them will kind of give you a sense of what the product is doing, what the competition is doing, and what they would be doing down the line, right? The fourth aspect is feature demand, right? So even when you have a product, you have to have a priority in terms of which features in that particular product are more appealing for the audience, right? Are more appealing for the market you are targeting, right? So because some features will involve a lot more cost for you to build, and some features may not involve as much cost, right? But if even before you get to that point of making a decision, it is important to be able to list out which features are going to be in demand. The fifth part is customer persona insights, right? So if you were to sell this particular product, whatever it is that you want to make, right? Who are you going to sell this to? What is their persona? How can you combine your audience into how can you give a face to that, right? How can you describe your ideal customer? That's what we are talking about here. Is it is it a middle-aged man, say a man between 40 and 45, earning 25 to 30 lakhs, living in a city and uses mobile phone, right? That could be the definition of a particular customer persona. Or it could be a young professional, 23 to 26 years old, female, earning maybe 10, 15 lakhs, living independently. That could be a different persona. So you have to understand who is going to buy your product, right? And for each of these personas that you define, it will help you build your product accordingly. It will give you insights about what features should you be keeping in your product, how should you label those features, and if you have to market your product, how are you going to reach out to this class of audience? Where are you going to reach out to them, right? So your customer persona insights are going to tell you about where to position your particular product, right? What is it? What is the gap that they are experiencing, that particular customer persona is experiencing? And that in turn will tell you what is your addressable population, how many people are likely to buy your product, right? It could be people or it could be companies, right? If there is a significant number of people or companies who are willing to buy your product at a certain price point, then you know how much money do you have to invest on your product and make a profit out of it, right? So that's the market gap analysis, and the market gap analysis will give you very, very key insights about why you are building that particular product, right? It helps you do something called a SWOT analysis on your product. It tells you what are the strengths of your business. If you have founding members who have 20 years of experience in their respective areas, or they have extremely good market credibility, then that is a strength, right? If your founding members are or your capital is not enough, you do not have money to reach the market, that could be a weakness, right? It could be, these are essentially characteristics of a business which make it disadvantageous relative to competition, right? If you wanted to build a food delivery app today, it is a great idea, but there are companies that are sitting on billions of dollars of cash, right? So they can quickly discount their products and run you out of business, right? So you have to think about that and essentially map where your strengths are relative to your competitors, where your weaknesses are relative to your competition, right? And the second two, the bottom two blocks which are here, are the opportunities and threats. What can change in the external environment that will present an opportunity to you, and vice versa, what can change in the external environment that can endanger your business, right? For example, the pandemic situation, right? Now, yes, we are all sitting at home and we are, doing things differently. We are doing webinars today, right? So that presents an opportunity for a platform like Google Meet, which is facilitating this discussion, whereas that is a threat for a transportation company or a real estate company, which was earlier either leasing out space to for employees, or transportation companies which was commuting people from one place to another, right? So the same external threat, right, be it a pandemic, be it a change in the law, be it a different combination of this, or a popular perception, right? These things, you have to assume that in the marketplace all of this happen, and with each of these events, some of them are going to be opportunities for you and some of them are going to be threats for you. But you need to have a grasp or some visibility into where your risks are, right? So every time you do a market analysis, you go back and do a SWOT analysis, right? Because the moment you do this SWOT analysis, then you start getting a sense of what your product would be, right? So you get your product, you list down the features that you want in your particular product, and you align that with the market. You can do this exercise, and you can come back and ask your focus audience, your focus group, if they like that particular idea, if they like that particular feature, right? Incorporate it or leave it out, right? And this goes around in a couple of cycles, right, before you get a sense of where your innovation is. Innovation does not happen in isolation. Innovation is the result of a structured process. Innovation is the result of significant insights, of significant root cause analysis of the market gap. Now, whether you want to use a fishbone analysis, fishbone diagram to do that, or a 5 why analysis, or a Pareto diagram, or some other form, there are multiple tools that are available, but essentially you have to distill your vision of the market gap into the product idea, right? The product idea, or the innovation space, as we call it, the innovation space, there are 4 essential coordinates of the innovation space, right? Your innovation could be a feature innovation. It could bring in a new concept or a new feature that was not available in the market before, right? For example, Apple may introduce a new phone with with an AI camera, right? That's a product innovation, right? Or you could do a position innovation. A position innovation, the example of a position innovation is, you have an airline that takes you from Calcutta to Chennai, right? You could have a product which offers a low-cost service, a no-frills service, right? So that product is positioned towards a low-cost, no-frills customer. Whereas you could offer the same product in business class, in first class, right? Those are positioned at a different audience, right? So it's the same product flying you from point A to point B, but it is positioned at different customer segments or at different customer personas, right? So your innovation could be a product innovation, it could be a position innovation, or it could be a process innovation, right? What I mean by a process innovation is, if you look at e-commerce today, right? Before e-commerce, people would go to a shop and they would buy the things that they wanted to buy, right? With e-commerce, you are sitting at home, you're placing your order, it gets packaged, it gets shipped over to you, and you have it available in your house, right? So the same groceries that you were buying earlier, you are still buying the same groceries, but the process has changed. So innovation can happen in the process as well, right? And finally, innovation can also happen in the paradigm, right? How a company is perceived by the general audience, right? For example, if Apple tomorrow launches a new phone priced at 1.5 lakhs, I'm sure there will be people who will go and buy it, right? But if Lava Mobiles decide to launch a 1.5 lakh phone, I'm not sure very many people would buy it, right? This is because they have innovated in that. Apple has innovated in its paradigm, right? It has put out, it is perceived as a company that will not compromise on quality, right? And that's what a paradigm innovation really means, right? So when a new product is realized, a new product can be realized in as a combination of any of these. So it could be higher on the positioning side, slightly on the feature side, slightly on the paradigm side, or this diamond could move in any of these four directions, right? Your innovation space is wide, and anywhere you find a gap in the market, you have the ability to innovate. Moving on, once you do innovate, what do you do next? Then you set yourself a mission, right? If you have the vision, saying, the general area, the broad and strategic vision that you have created, now that you have a product idea, you set out on a goal, on a mission, right? Missions are therefore characterized by two concepts, right? One is that missions must be achievable. It must be something that you can do. And the second thing is missions must be time bound, right? So there can be a short-term mission. What will be your goal in the next 1 month? What will be your mission in the next 1 month, in the next 1 year, or in the next 10 years, right? You could say that, I want to I want to become a leader in selling sanitary napkins, right? I want to be able to sell reusable sanitary napkins, and I want to impact the lives of 20 million women in the next 10 years, right? So that is an achievable time-bound mission statement. And all your internal plannings, your roadmaps, your go-to markets have to be aligned so that you can constantly measure whether you are making progress towards your mission statement or not, right? So when you are in the stage of creating an MVP, right, when you are thinking about what is that MVP that I will create, these are all steps that happen before that, right? So this is still happening at a concept stage, right? So pretty much by the end of the concept stage, you are usually in a position where you can say that, yes, this is what I want to build as my MVP, as my minimum viable product, right? Next, you enter into what is called the early stage of the company, right? And the first thing that you do as an early stage company is form the company. Right? Now, that is easier said than, by the way, any questions so far?
Students, any question?
Okay, I'll move on. Just give me a second. So the next step is forming the company itself. And the company formation involves a few steps that you must be aware of before you make your own company, right? The first thing is, if you are making a company, your company needs to have a name, right? Easier said than done, because when you want to name your company, you may want to call your company the government's best company, right? Technically, it is a name, but there are certain rules and regulations about naming your company, right? You cannot be starting a name with alphanumerics, right? You cannot use certain keywords in your name, like government, like Indian Institute, right? Like Prime Minister, right? So there are certain exclusions that you cannot include in the name of that you cannot have as the name of your company, right? So the name of your company, you have to go to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs site and search through, you put in your company name and you search if there are registered companies with that name. And if not, then only will you be granted the permission to use that name. Then only we are sure that that name can be used, right? The second thing is to identify your class of business. what is the service that you will be offering to the community, to the population. Right? The class of business depends on, again, the services. So you could be offering, say, restaurant services, right? So making and selling of food. It could be making and selling of packaged food. It could be educational services. It could be software development services. So each of these services, there is a business code associated with each class of service. You are not allowed, two companies cannot have the same name in the same class of business. That is a conflict. But you can have two companies which offer different set of services. That is allowed. This is important because when you define yourself in a class of business, that it has certain taxation ramifications. It has certain taxation clauses. Right? The third thing that is important here is what is known as the Articles of Association. If you have a founding team, or you have people who are coming together to form the company, then how will the company operate? What are the fundamental guidelines of operating the company? Just like if you were renting a place from a landlord, then the landlord and the tenant, they have a lease agreement. The Articles of Association describes the functioning, the proper functioning or the accepted functioning of the organization. When can an annual general meeting be called? When can an EGM be called? What are the kind of things that can be placed on and decided by the company? All of that is captured in that Articles of Association. This is important because when you file for your company registration, you need to file with the Articles of Association, your company name, and the class of business. So this will allow you to file for a company, and once it is filed, you will get a company identification number from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, right? You file it through your Registrar of Companies, and the SIN number establishes that is your date of incorporation of the company. One more thing that is needed for SIN is you need to have if you are forming a company, or one more thing I forgot over here is India allows multiple types of companies that you have to be aware of. Now, if you are a proprietary company, if you wanted to be a food stall selling in front of a mall, you don't really need to go and register with the MCA. It is considered to be a proprietary business, and all the accounts are maintained as per the proprietary policies, right? However, if you are going to register with the MCA, you can be a for-profit company, or you can be a non-profit, or a trust, or a foundation. So I'm not going to cover the trusts and foundations. Call it educational establishments, NGOs. They are founded as foundations or trusts. The highest class that is allowed in the MCA is called a private limited company, right? And with a private limited company, the promoters of the company take on the responsibility of the company itself. The private limited companies have been allowed since the Companies Act of 1953. This was modified later on in 2013 to allow two new forms of companies, right? The first form is called the LLC, or a limited liability company. A limited liability company is a much simpler company to set up, right? It is very good for companies which are just about starting out and do not want to maintain the overhead, the compliance overhead of having a legal representation, having a financial representation, having an accounting representation, right? So it's more for a small company which is just starting up. All of these are overheads. All of these are extra expenses without money really coming into the company, right? Therefore, in the spirit of innovation, the government has allowed LLCs to be formed. And when you are running a company, you are taking on a lot of risks. So the company may stay afloat, but it is also possible that the company may go under. The company may fold, and it may not be profitable, right? In case of a private limited company, there is a lot more compliance, and therefore a private limited company, the risks of a private limited company going under is lower. But for a private limited company, the directors, the promoters of the company are directly responsible for the debts of the company. Whereas for a limited liability company, the promoters or the founders of the company, their personal wealth is not at stake. So if the company does not do well and for some reason an LLC has to be closed down, the founder's wealth is not attached, right? That is a very, very important distinction. The third type of company that is allowed is called a OPC, or a one-person company. A one-person company is like a proprietary company, except that a OPC is allowed to be registered with the MCA, right? And it again has the benefits of an LLC. Now, at any given point, an OPC can become an LLC, can become a private limited company, but not the other way around, right? So what this gives you is these structures or these forms of companies. It allows you to build a company as per your convenience, as per the budget that is available with you, right? So when you are, once you have your MVP idea, once you have your product idea in mind, it is best to first form the company before starting to build the product or the MVP. The reason being that unless you have a company, the costs of building that particular product cannot be amortized. You are paying for that essentially out of your pocket. But once a company has been formed, the cost of building is essentially attributed to the company itself, right? And you can get tax benefits because of the R&D investment that you are making. The OPCs generally can work with one person, so you can have one director, but LLCs and private limited companies needs to have at least two directors, two full-time directors, right? In order to become a director in a company, you need to register yourself with the MCA and get a digital a director identification number called a DIN number. In order to get a DIN number, you need to have, a law currently mandates that you must have a digital certificate. You can buy a digital certificate by doing a eKYC process, a know your customer process, through companies like eMudra, right? Where you verify using your PAN card or your Aadhaar card, and you will get a digital certificate. So I don't know if, so typically, your digital certificate will look like this. It is just looks like a USB key, and every time you have to sign a document, you put in your digital key, and that will allow you to make signatures, which can be verified that you have made that signature, right? For DIN registration, it is mandatory. Once you have your DIN number, the company is there, the company has its directors, you want to start doing business, right? Because whatever, whatever expenses you need to have, whatever, there are going to be people to come and meet you. So you must have a place of business. So a place of business must be registered. Now, this place of business, if you are working with Institute Innovation Center, typically the IIC policies will allow you to use the IIC's address as your place of business, right? So this is where all your registered mail, all your registered communication are going to come, right? Once you have that registered, you need to get a trade license. And the trade license is your permission to do business in that state, right? So it's a state subject, and typically the trade licenses will be issued by your by the municipality or the local area body, right? The trade license will determine your modes of operation and your ability to stock, right? For example, if your class of business is indicated as a restaurant business with cooking involved, then to get your trade license, you will need to get clearance certificates from the fire department, right? Certain safety regulations. In some cases, it may require some environmental regulations to be fulfilled. So the trade license essentially ensures that you are operating in a safe manner, right? Once you have your trade license, the next thing that you need is your IT registration, right? Your company needs to be a legal entity in front of the taxation authorities, right? So your company needs to have its own PAN card. right? You do that registration with the income tax department, and along with the PAN card, you also need to get a GST identification number, especially if you are going to be selling inside the state or outside the state. GST is usually required if you are having sales volumes of more than 10 lakhs, right? The IT registrations, right, that will allow you to open a current account. That is why you need the IT registration. Without a current account, any payments that you are making, remember, that payment cannot be shown on the books of the company, right? It can be a personal payment, but unless you are paying from the current account associated with the company, that money cannot be accounted for. If you are bringing on employees from day one, or you have a plan to bring on employees, then it is usually recommended that you also work with the Ministry of Labor and you set up a PF registration, right? You essentially create a PF account so that, you know, as you hire more and more employees, the ministry is aware that you are hiring them and you are generating employment out of it, right? The PF registration, if not done early, can lead to certain back taxes that you want to avoid, right? But this is important only when you are in a stage where you are hiring employees, right? If you have a trademark, if you have a brand name, if you have a logo or a product name that you want to protect, we are a company, we are building something, right? Support us or whatever. You need to have your website out there, and for your website, you need to register your domain, right? Whether that is a .info domain, .in domain, or a .com domain really depends up to you. And but you do not want to be in a situation where you cannot name your company, you cannot get the domain with the name of your company, right? Once all of this is through, you can start your business, right? Now, just to give you a sense of the pricing involved in forming a company, your company name search is essentially free, right? This is the class of business is information that you can collect from the internet, right? The articles of associations are usually framed by a lawyer, and there are going to be lawyer charges associated with this. The company MCA registration is about 5,000 rupees. The digital certificates cost about 5,000 rupees for a 2-year class 3 certificate, right? If you have 2 people or 3 people as directors, then you need so many certificates. The trade license will essentially cost you a few hundred rupees. The IT registration will cost you a few hundred rupees. The GST registration will cost you about 1,200 to 1,500 rupees, right? There's some costs in the hundreds associated with EPFO registration, and the the trademark registration will typically be about 5,000 to 6,000 rupees, right? And the domain registration is usually anywhere between a few hundred rupees to a few lakhs of rupees, right? Depending on the type of domain you want, right? Now, if you are part of an incubation cell, if you are part of an innovation cell, right, then the innovation cell may provide you certain legal services free of cost, right? That will cover the costs of doing the name search, the articles, the articles of association. A lot of this paperwork that is needed, they may be funded by the innovation center. However, there are these mandatory costs, the statutory costs that you have to pay to the government, and those are costs that will need to be built to the company that is being formed, right? So because these are company expenses. The moment you form your company, right? The moment you have formed your company, and the reason, as I mentioned, for that you formed the company was so that you could build your product, right? You could build your MVP. Now, building that MVP means that you will be spending money, right? You'll be spending cost, whether it is actual cost or it is nominal cost, right? Whether you as a founder or as a technology founder are donating your time to the company for free does not matter. You are still spending time, and there is a cost associated with it. There could be equipment that you need to buy, there could be certifications that you need to go and get, right? So all of this will involve cost, and therefore pretty much as soon as you form your company, you have to be in a position to raise money, right? Without money, you will not be able to move forward, right? So you have to be pitching your product, whether that is in the form of, whether you are pitching that in the form of, you could be asking for a grant to the government or to a foundation, or you could be pitching this to investors, right? So you need to put together a pitch deck as soon as you have your company ready, right? What does the pitch deck contain? The pitch deck contains your vision, mission statement. What is it that you want to? Who are you, and what is it that you want to do in the near midterm? Right. What is the problem that you want to solve? What is the serviceable market that you are addressing? Right. Where are you going to go and sell your product? What is new about your innovation? Why should people fund it? How will your project grow? What is the growth projection that you have? How much money do you need for your MVP? Whether it is 50,000 or 5 crores, right? How much money do you need? Because it will depend completely on what you are trying to build, right? You may be able to build a technology MVP within less than 50,000, but if you are trying to, find a vaccine for COVID, your MVP itself may cost you 5 crores, right? So how much money do you need and why, right? Finally, when is this going to be ready? When can you take this to market? And how is your team competency aligned to deliver that, right? I'll give you an example of a pitch deck. This is a pitch deck from a company called Airbnb, which has inspired Oyo Hotels here, right? So Airbnb, this is a 2009 presentation. And as you can see, it's a very simplified presentation. They have their logo, they have the problem statement and the solution that they are offering. They have taken this to market. So they're offering a basic market validation. They're giving you the market size and the product form, which is a website, right? So they've just said that this is a product, this is the shape of their product. What is their business model? How are they going to make money? How is it going to get adopted? Who are the competition? What are their competitive advantages? So this is part of their SWOT. Who their team are? What is the press talking about them? And with this itself, back into 2010, they raised first $20,000. Then they went ahead and raised $615,000, right? At a valuation of 2.5 million. So this 11 slides or 14 slides allowed the company to raise $2.5 million in 2009. Today, when you are looking for seed valuation, right? You have to be, you have to understand that, people will value you because you are showing them profits. Otherwise, there is no money, right? So even when you go to an incubation center, the fact that the incubation center is helping you with a lot of the legal processes, a lot of the technology processes, means that the innovation center will ask you for anywhere between 5 to 10% of your company from day one, right? After that, when you are starting to build your MVP and you need funding for that, you will again have to dilute anywhere between 5 to 10% of the company in order to raise the first round of money, right? And this cycle will continue. We'll come back to the valuation in a little bit, right? Once you have the pitch deck and you are ready to make, you have some money to start off with, then only you start building your MVP. Right? Then only you get to a stage where you're buying the components and you are building it, right? What does it mean to build the MVP? First of all, you need your feature list. What is the, when you are doing your market research, what were the set of features that people said that they were interested in? How many of these features are really important? How many of these features do you want to put in your MVP? Because the more features, the more cost, right? For every feature that you are building in, how are you going to measure that this is an efficient feature, that this feature makes sense, right? So you need to go get it tested. You need to get it certified by third-party agencies, whether it is a certification for saying that, hey, this is waterproof, or you're building a water pump and you say that a water purifier, and you want to measure, say that yes, the water purifier works, and this is the rate of removal of total dissolved solids, right? Whatever that is, you need to get it certified. Internal certifications are okay, but if you want to be credible in the market, you want to get it certified from certifying agencies, like mostly nationally accredited laboratories, right? In this process, right, while you are building the MVP, that is where your IP actually gets identified, right? More than, why is that IP gets identified here? Because what you were thinking about as ideas before, right? It is only when you build the MVP that the idea is reduced to practice. There are 101 ideas that come to me every day, right? All of them are patentable, but none of them is a patent, because I've not been able to reduce those ideas to practice. A patent essentially protects you only if you have been able to reduce it to practice. Be very careful of that terminology, right? In case of a patent war, in case of somebody's counterclaim on your patent, then it always boils down to who has demonstrated reducing it to practice first, right? So after you have your IP identification, then you create a product roadmap. You have included certain features in your MVP, but what are the other features that you did not include? Right, that is important. When are you going to include those, right? Because remember that developing any of those features or developing any of those features into a product later on is also going to cost you money, right? So as you launch your product, you may get to meet new people, or you may have new investors who may want, because of which you may want to change your product roadmap. You may want to bring certain features ahead in your development plan, and certain features you may want to push back, right? So when you are creating your MVP, you also get to know where your product roadmap is and which items have been moved into the product backlog and have become part of the roadmap. So you can also, with the roadmap, the advantage is that when you talk to your investors, it allows them to say that, look, I don't have this feature today, but I will have this feature 6 months down the line, or I will have this feature 1.5 years down the line, right? And based on funding conditions, you can change that, right? So that is why building the product roadmap is important. Now remember, you are building a product, right? If you are building a product, you always think of your product as the best product, right? But the challenge is that the product is very much like a movie, right? Salman Khan can come in and say that he has been making the best movies, but the market may not think so, right? Irrespective of the amount of effort that you put in building a product, the market's perception of your product can be very different to your own perception. No hard feelings. You can you can put in days and nights of effort. The market may think that it is absolute junk. Very much possible. Or you could build something that you think, it's really trivial, but the market may feel that it has a lot of value, right? So when you are building your product, there are 6 questions that you should be asking, right? Why your product should exist? Right? Very, very important question. Why does your product exist, right? What is your product? It is not the physical shape of the product that is important, right? You have to understand what is the core of the product that you are building, right? How will that product be realized, right? Where will you position that product? Who will buy the product? Who will buy that product, and when will they buy that product, right? So you have to be very mindful of this essentially 5YH framework that exists around the product, right? So first of all, why should the product exist? Because you have done your market research and that has revealed the gap. So it is data driven, right? Why your product exists, you have the answer because it is coming from your data, right? What is your product? It is the value delivery mechanism, right? So the process, whatever processes that were developed to manufacture and deliver the mechanism of value, right? That is your product, right? The patentable part of it. If you cannot build a new competition or a new product because it is if it already exists in the market. How will the product be realized? It is very important that you do not attempt to reinvent the wheel. If things are already there, use them, right? Otherwise, it is going to take you a very, very long time to reach the market. And by that time, other people would have heard your product pitches. They would have built it, they would have put in more resources and they would have already built it and taken it to market, right? So use a framework to prioritize what is it that you want to buy, what is it that you have the competency to make in-house, you have the time to make in-house. Otherwise, you either buy it from some, buy some pieces from some other people, from partners, from vendors, or you create joint IP with some other partners. So some of it you build, some of it you buy, and some of it you make, right? That's how you realize the product, right? Where will you position the product? That has to align with your market gap analysis. That has to align with your corporate vision and mission statements, on your value statements, right? Because I may think of aligning the product somewhere, but if I build a product, say for example, my value is carbon neutrality and my value is cleanliness or environment friendliness, right? And I build a product which is a plastic throwaway bottle of water, right? Then my product and my corporate values or my corporate vision or the founder's vision, they are not aligning, right? That product will not be successful because there is a fundamental conflict. We said that, who will buy your product? You have to define your customer segment, look at the customer persona, and that is how you'll identify, you'll be able to market that product better there, right? And the last question is very interesting. I'll come back to this in a little while. When will they buy the product, right? How do you know that people are liking your product, right? There are certain innovation diffusion metrics that are used to identify that. While you are building your MVP, as I mentioned, you have already, that is where you identify your intellectual property. Now, whether that property is going to be in the form of a patent, or it is going to be in the form of a copyright or a trademark, right? Or it is going to be a geographical indication. All of these are different types of intellectual property because all of them are valuable. All of them can be valued with money, right? Therefore, when you build the MVP, you kind of protect it as intellectual property, right? Including your domain name. Right? Now, once you have built your MVP, what is important is you must take it to market to understand if your market is accepting your product or your offering, right? And that's where you get into this phase of test marketing, right? With the test market, you see that if it has been accepted. If not, you come back and redesign your MVP and then go to the market again. If it is not working, you come back again and you iterate over here as many times as is necessary until you have a product that makes money, right? So how do you get to the test market? First of all, you have to identify your test market, whether it is going to be a geography, which state, which city you want to be your test market, or which population you want to be your state market, right? In that, you identify what is your total addressable population, right? In that total addressable population, then you check for whether your innovation is being accepted in that market, what is the rate of diffusion of your product in that particular market. And then you can do A/B testing, right? Which is where you give a certain set of people, a focus group, a product with a particular variant, right? And another group of people on the same product with a different variant, right? With a different color scheme, with a different feature set, right? One thing you make different in two things. And then you go and ask which one is preferred over others. That will give you data. That will give you the actual data about, which features are desirable or not, and accordingly you do your iteration. Because as I said, Salman Khan thinks that all his movies are great, but the public thinks otherwise, right? So it is very much possible that the best product that you have made is absolutely hated by the market, right? In which case, what do? That is why you go to a test market, because if the product is not being accepted there, you can contain the test market. You can say that, okay, this product did not work, rebrand, create a new brand once you are ready with the new MVP, and try out in a different test market. The word doesn't spread that your product is bad, right? So that is how you have contained the test market, right? When I talk about innovation diffusion, there is a very famous metric for measuring how your diffusion happens. And in anything, if you know the total addressable market, if you know that 100,000 people are there in your market whom you targeted with your MVP, you look at how many people are adopting, right? How many people are innovators. If you are getting adoption from 3%, 4% of the market, that is a very good indication that the market is starting to accept your product, right? Then you have the early adopters, right? So 13.5%, one sigma to your left, right? So that's about 15% people are adopting, which means that the market knows about your product, they are accepting it. But once you cross this chasm, once you go past the 15%, you will find that you will quickly get to this mark, towards the 50% mark, right? This is what tells you that the market has accepted your product, right? If you, for example, if I were to sell petrol at 20 rupees a liter, right, I will get immediately sold out. People will form a queue outside my house, and all my petrol, all my stock will be gone in a matter of minutes, right? Yes, I will get a lot of revenue, but I'm getting that revenue because the market price of petrol is 90 rupees. I'm selling it for 20 rupees. There is revenue, but there is no unit profit, right? When you are building your MVP, when you are looking at this graph, you are looking at it from the mindset of creating unit economics, right? Every product must be sold at more than what it cost. The revenue may not cover the cost of your sunk cost, your investment into R&D. It may not cover that, but it must cover the cost of its production, right? That is important, right? And you measure that against this diffusion curve, right? So you kind of keep on going round and round unless you have come to a stage where your product is ready to be is showing unit economics, right? Once you are there, you know that you have a business. The business model or the business case has been established. Now it is just a matter of expanding and making sure that you are making more and more revenues from multiple places. That is where you create your expansion plan, right? The expansion plan can come over from multiple things, right? It could be your product that is expanding, your product features that are expanding, or products and services can be kind of used interchangeably. So it could be your products or services that are expanding, or it could be your customer delight plan, right? What you are offering, you could be bundling other services in your product, right? If you buy a handset, you get 1 year of ZTV membership free, right? So this is the customer delight plan, right? You are cross-selling other products, and that's helping you drive up your revenues, right? It could be a brand expansion plan, right? You were earlier giving out leaflets to people, now you want to have a billboard, right? But there's a cost associated with that, right? It could be a geographical expansion, territorial expansion plan, or it could be a positioning roadmap expansion, right? You are earlier selling to in the category of 20 to 25-year-olds. Now you're moving to 20 to 30-year-olds, right? So that's a change in positioning, right? To do all of this, you need a larger team. So your team needs to expand, right? So you have a team expansion plan, or your board could expand. You may be getting new investors, because of which your board is expanding, which means that your offices should also be expanding. So there are multiple expansion plans that can happen. And for every one of those plans, there needs to be revenue to execute on those plans, right? So once you move past making those plans, you're essentially in your growth stage, right, where you are looking for external investment series to fund the expansion that you are craving for, right? This is where it goes into the funding series, and this is a cycle. So this kind of goes on into series A, series B funding, series C funding, you can go up to series M, N, whatever, right? When you are asking for this kind of funding, not for the risk of finding the product, but your product has already been established and you are asking for funding for growth, right? That is what your series funding is. At that point, your assets will get valued, right? So whatever IP you have filed for, right, whether it is your patents, whether it is your trademarks, whether it is your your domain names, all of that, your customer database, all of that will get valued, right? Next thing is, if you're going for investment for a series funding, you need to go and tell people why you are asking for money, which among those expansion plans are your priority, right? What is the purpose and how much money are you asking for? Are you asking for $1 million? Are you asking for $5 million? If you are asking for $5 million, when are you going to be able to return that money? Right. So typically what will happen is, when you are asking for investment, you are going to be diluting your stake, right? Before you come into the investment round, you have already kind of diluted about 10% for the innovation center, maybe another 5% or 10% for early stage employees. You have given them equity in the company, right? So when you are getting into this investment, into the series funding, the founders may be holding about 80% of the company, right? When you are asking for investment, you may be willing to dilute, say, 10% or 15% of the company at a given rate, right? Now, in the next round of investment, the person who came, or the company that came and bought 10% of your company, right, or they may be willing to sell 5% or 50% of their stake, which is 5% of the company, at a higher valuation, right? So when you are asking for investment funding, you are typically, your investors will ask you for what will be the valuation growth that will happen, right? If they are spending $1 million for 10% of their company, how soon can they sell their stake for 2 million? Whether it is in 6 months, whether it is in 3 months, whether it is in 9 months, you have to have the plan to justify that statement, right? That is what causes the investment to come in. That is what will cause capital to come into your company, right? And with every round, you are diluting your stake. You have to remember that. In this process, once you are in this growth stage, for every cycle that you are raising, you are corporatizing as well, right? What I mean by that is, now it is no longer possible for just the founding teams to run the entire organization. Now you need to bring in more organizational structures, because the team is scaling, because you have expanded, right? You need to have functional teams which are doing one thing. There could be functional teams for maintaining your accounts. There could be functional teams for operations. There could be functional teams for product development. And as a corporate, you now start to improve your processes, see which things were taking time, so that if there was an individual who was doing extremely well, if they are no longer in the company, because the larger you are, more people will also leave your company, right? For whatever reason, there's going to be attrition. As more and more people leave your company, you have to find out how new people can come in and work at the same pace. This happens when you incorporate the individual's expert thought processes into tangible processes within the company itself. That is where you create workflows. That is where you start bringing in IT systems to bring about a consistency of processes, right? As a corporate, you are now liable to file for taxes at right times. You are liable to ensure that you have to report any kind of misgivings in the company. You have to report any kind of sexual assault within your company. You have to report any kind of accident in the factory, right? So there are these statutory compliances that will come into the picture once you corporatize, right? Along with that, you have your corporate social responsibilities, because it is now your job to create employment for others, to create value for society around you, to kind of come and grow the entire region along with you, right? If you have noticed, what has happened in this entire journey is that the entrepreneur's hats, right, the many functions that the entrepreneur was doing, that has become the organization structure, right? The entrepreneur's genes, their thought processes have become roles and functions within the company itself. For example, setting and executing the vision and the mission becomes the CEO's roles. Executing the operations becomes the CEO's role, right? The chief operating officer's role, and his team, of course, right? Executing the go-to-market strategy becomes the chief sales officer's role, right? Setting the organizational policy and managing the talent pool becomes the chief human resource officer's role, right? Maintaining the bottom line and driving valuation becomes the chief financial officer's role. The product strategy, development, and sourcing becomes the chief technology officer's role, right? The organizational digitization and efficiency becomes the CIO's or the chief information officer's role, right? The brand development, creating the need for the product, becomes the chief marketing officer's role. And the voice of the customer essentially becomes your customer support, right? You are now, as an organization, you are responsible for managing all the touch points that a potential customer has with your organization. Either they're using your app, or they're using your website, or they're using your brick and mortar store, or they come into your offices, or they call up your customer care center, right? The experience that you provide to your customer will determine your success. And the consistency of messaging is very, very important over there, right? So this is how the organization becomes an enterprise. It starts to grow, right? At any given point, you can continue to raise more investments and continue growing like that. But many organizations may feel that they want to grow larger into enterprises, into publicly traded enterprises, and they go down the path of launching an initial public offer or come listing into the stock market, right? When you come into the stock market, you get a sense of where your valuation truly is, right? So you identify what are the capital needs of your organization. How, if you have an aggressive, if you want to, you come to the IPO, especially when for example, you want to launch 2 new factories that are going to cost you 4,000 crores, right? Where do you get the money from? From the general public, right? So you identify what your capital needs are, and then you disclose your intention of going public to the Stock Exchange Board of India, right? That's the regulatory body in India. And there you go in and file all your statutory declarations, including your revenues in the last 3 years, your workforce, your growth rate, your profitability, all that information you publish, right? Along with that, you set a price band, and you get some anchor investors, right? So you get some anchor investors. These are usually high net worth individuals, and you tell them that, look, I'm going to be selling 10% of my company, and I want to raise 40,000 crores. I want to, release 1 lakh shares into the, or 1 crore shares into the market, right? You get your anchor investors to invest at a minimum valuation, which means that you have the faith of a few people to say that, yes, your company is going to do well, right? So that's how you get the first set of anchor investors. And then what you get is some institutional investors, right? Institutions like State Bank, LIC, ICICI, these are all institutions. So it's banking or non-banking financial institutions. You kind of bring them together, and that's where your second segment of investors are. And the third segment of investors are retail investors like you and me, right? You will launch the IPO. The company launches the IPO. They will work with their auditors, their book building companies, and they will launch the IPO in a particular price band, right? Say somebody wants to launch it in between. Last week, in fact, there were 3 IPOs that were launched by a company called Dodla Dairy, a company called Sona BLW, and Sham Metallics, right? And each of them had kind of given their own price band, right? So each of them had given, like somebody said that, they wanted to sell their shares at 290 to 295 rupees, right? That's a band. And in that band, the retail investors, the institutional investors, they all bid for it, right? If there's a very high gray market premium for this brand, which means there's general enthusiasm in the public to buy, they feel that given the statutory declarations, the company could be worth more than what they think that is worth, then there is significant gray market premium. If there is gray market premium, then more and more people apply for those shares, right? And eventually the shares will get allocated, right? If there's a higher gray market premium, then there are more investors than the number of stocks, right? Which means that then the stocks have to be, you have to have some kind of an arbitrary lottery process to allocate the shares, right? Then the company gets listed in the primary market, and once it gets listed, it is now available for trading in the secondary market, right? And that's how a company goes public, right? That's really the mature stage of an organization, where once a company has become public, and by the way, only a private limited company can go into the have an IPO. Once the company has gone public, all its records must be made available, all its filings must be made available. There must be you have to invite all the stockholders into the annual general meetings, right? So you have to have a lot of compliance and oversight, right? So that people are aware of what you are doing, right? You cannot keep things disclosed anymore, right? So that's how essentially you move all the way from a concept stage, where you have a group of people, a couple of friends, sitting together and thinking about, hey, what can we do, to actually creating a company. That's the entire roadmap, right? And with that, I will take questions.
Yes, students, you can ask questions to sir.
Yeah, I think there's some questions on the chat box. It is from
Videsh
Mr.
Roy.
Videsh Roy.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Videsh Roy, you can talk. You can talk to sir. You can ask your question directly.
Videsh, are you there?
So Vidish's question is that as a startup founder, you face most difficulties are to retain a good talent and continues money flow in company. Okay. So the first thing is the first 50 employees in a company are very, very important. These are the people who will make or break your company. So when you want to retain good talent, right, you have to motivate them beyond money. If a talent is coming to you because of money, they will go from you because of money. You cannot compete on that money point anymore. There has to be a fundamental vision where you are aligned. If your alignment is at a vision level, therefore all senior level hires are actually made on vision rather than on actual competencies, right? So you have to motivate your candidates, you have to motivate your talent on, align them on the vision and motivate them, allow them to also grow with you, right? You have to ensure that they have some equity in the company, that they are growing with, there is a motivation for them to go that extra mile, because they feel invested in that company, they feel that it is their company, right? So that's the only way to retain good talent, right? If you are, it is fine if you are paying somebody maybe 15%, 20% lower than market rates, and you are giving them that opportunity to grow. But if you are paying them 30%, 70% low, then I'm sorry, then they will at some point put that the loss of money as a it's going to start bothering them, and eventually they're going to leave, right? So if you want to address that problem, you have to take care of them, right? That's one. Secondly, to be a founder, I think you also have to understand what your style of leadership is, right? If you are going to be an authoritative leader where you are going to drive, you're going to micromanage the company, then your employees may feel stifled, right? On the other hand, if you are a visionary and you are working with a mature team, then that may also work. So how you project yourself, or how is, what is the example that you are setting in front of your team is also important, right? Are they aspiring to become like you, or are they absolutely hating you, right? Those are reflections that you have to make, right? Second thing is continuous money flow in the company. You have to be pitching every day. There is no other option for that. Every day you have to, as a founder of a company, you are the main salesman in the company, right? There is every conversation that you are having is about the company. It is about progressing or making progress on the company. Network, right? Be able to see if people are responding to you. If you are pitching your idea, are people walking away from you, or are they talking to you, right? That's a good way to get a sense of where that money is. Ask for money. We tend to be a little shy when it comes to money. That is, when you are, as a founder, if you are asking for money, it's where you are communicating for mutual benefit, because the person who's going to give you the money is not doing you a favor. They are investing the money, right? If you are going and asking friends and family who may not be sure about giving you money, then it is a different equation. It is not an investment, right? It is angel funding, right? They are giving you the money because they know you, they trust you. They are okay if the money goes away. But as an investor, right, the moment they come and give you money, they will have questions, and as a founder, you need to be able to answer those questions, right? That is very, very important. So you have to have, you need to be pitching your company all the time. And if that means diluting, speak to a few strategic investors who can bring in a significant chunk of money so that you are not fundraising all the time. But you have to be on the road, you have to be fundraising. The moment you hit around 50 to 55% of your, you've already spent that 50 to 55% of your runway, right, of your seed money or your series money, you have to hit the road again and you have to raise more money.
Students, any more questions? You want to know anything from sir?
Shubhajit asked, A and B both are different people from different companies and they work on same business idea. Is there any copyright issue? Well, for there to be a and B both work in are different people from different companies, okay, and they work on same business idea. So typically what happens is when you take this structured approach of creating a market gap, if you are looking for a market gap, chances are that there are other people who are also looking at that market gap. And when companies form, you'll typically find 5 or 6 companies that are forming in the same space, right? Remember when Paytm was coming about, there were about 12 or 15 different wallets that were going around, and eventually they consolidated. Right? Some of them have slightly better features. Some of them were gaining market acceptance. That's the nature of the market itself. So more often than not, if you think that you have the brightest idea, chances are there are 5 other people who are working on the same idea in different companies, right? They may not be knowing about each other. It's only when you are making the marketing noise, because the moment you pitch your idea into the market, that idea will get copied like that, right? So unless you have taken protections, right, it is not protected. Trade secret, if it goes out, it is no longer protected. And even though the fundamentals say, for example, McDonald's sells burgers, KFC sells burgers, Dairy Queen sells burgers. So there are quite a few companies which sell burgers, but each of those burger companies, they have a loyal they have a loyal customer base, primarily because each of them are able to do something extra in their product. They're able to have a flavor profile which is unique to them, or there's something extra because of which they have a loyalty base, right? So even if you have a few ideas that are coming about in similar areas, there's nothing to worry about.
Any more questions, students?
I think sir has also shared one link.
So I've shared the link. I saw that there's already a participation attendance link. If that is already there, then I think this is redundant. But I'll get the list of participants from the organizers themselves, right? In which case, I do not know if you can delete it. I don't think you can.
No, sir, it's okay.
No, sir, it's okay, sir.
We can proceed.
I didn't realize. I didn't realize that there was already another link out there. Right? So please share the list.
But this link has an extra feature, that is, if anybody wants to start a startup idea, they can put there also.
Yes,
that
because I actually respond back to that. If there's an idea that you have pitched and you want certain inputs on that, I usually respond back to that idea so that there's some feedback.
Yes, sir. Indeed, this is very much required. Maybe we'll include this feature next time in our attendance sheet also.
Absolutely, absolutely. You
Yes,
should always
yes.
ask what is it that they want to do, because there has to be some takeaway from this whole discussion, right? It cannot be discussion for the sake of discussion, right? When we are in an academic setting, I think we in India we still do not have that culture of creating companies out in the academic institutes itself. But in my work life, what I have seen is I used to work for. A company called Blue Highway which was a Welsh Allen company, and part of what we used to do was we used to bring 5 or 6 different people from very different backgrounds, right? For example, I had I coming from a computer science background. I had somebody who was coming in from a biomechanical background, somebody from electronics background, somebody from a mathematical background, somebody from a physics background. Right? You put 5 of them together, and we used to brainstorm on certain products that we wanted to make for the company. And we thought of the timeline that was given to us was, think about a product that you would make in 7 years time frame, right? So we thought, okay, we were making thermometers at that point, and we used to have a $200 million thermometer business, right? We said that, okay, now the handheld thermometers are coming in really handy. We want to make a newer version of that. We want to make a microwave based thermometer, but making that was difficult. So we made pieces out of that, and we gave one piece to a professor in Cornell. We gave one piece to a professor in Rochester, right? We gave one piece to a professor at Princeton, right? And said, why don't you hire PhD students? Let them work on this project, so that somebody was building a sub microwatt level microprocessor. Somebody was building a less than minus 85 dB antenna, right? So we each of them were building those pieces, and then we brought them together into making a product, right? So that's how that culture is not there in India yet, where students are coming together and working on ideas for themselves. But the good thing is, with IIC, students are allowed; they are getting academic credit for the for starting up a company. You are going to get attendance credit for starting up your company, and this is a lifelong passion. Once you start into this fold of building a company, you will continue to do that for the next 50 years. Right? You cannot get out of it, because then you have a problem, everything looks like a solution. Right? I've gone far beyond my time. Yes, Rupa
Yeah,
Madam.
thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for your wonderful, informative, and so detailed lecture about entrepreneurship. I think the students have got some idea about the basic requirements and steps to be followed before forming a company. There are new definitions of innovations which are given by the speaker, and its matrices which are needed to buy a product, and what is corporatization. And there are many definitions which are given by the speaker in detail, so detailed. Thank you so much, sir, for excellent information on today's session, that is prototype validation, converting prototype into a startup. Hoping to hear more from you, sir, in near future. So now I would like to request Mr. Arbindu Mitro to present a memento as a token of appreciation to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm just a minute. 1 minute.
So this is a small token of appreciation from MHRD IIC Cell of Narula Institute of Technology.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is a certificate of appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome.
Now, I would like to request Dr. Bishwajit Haldar to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. Good evening, everyone. I, Dr. Vishnu Haldar, am honored and lucky to have the opportunity to give a vote of thanks on this special day on the session of prototype validation. I particularly like Mr. Otulu Raichudhuri, where he mentioned the various opportunities and needs for the startup, and the way in which he explained the subject was extraordinary. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to our principal madam, Professor Muthiwar Anjila madam, and our registrar madam, Mrs. Nidhi Singh, for their perfect logistic support and guidance. I also extend my thanks to our teachers, students, particularly the organization teams of MHRD IIC Cell of Nadula Institute of Technology, particularly Dr. Sandha Padnaik Madam, Professor Rupa Saha, and Professor Alkendra Mitra. Thank you to all. I would like to thank all the participants again for making this event a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So I end the session for today. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
all of you.
Thank you, sir. So all of you, please put the attendance on the link, okay? Please do not
Please
forget
take
to
your
put